The HOA president gave my widowed mother 30 days to tear down the workshop my father built with his own hands. She claimed it blocked a community drainage easement. She even brought a map. But the line on that map did not match the one recorded with the county, and the man she brought along knew it. When Mom called that Thursday afternoon, she sounded calm. Too calm. By the time I arrived, Vanessa Whitaker was standing outside Dad's workshop beside a younger man in a reflective vest. Mom held Dad's wooden ruler against her chest. A violation notice was taped to the door. "Caleb," she said, "they needed to inspect the drainage line," Mom told me. Then she asked me to sign something. Vanessa lifted her clipboard. Just an acknowledgement that we discussed the obstruction. When I reached for it, she pulled it away. The notice gave Mom 30 days to remove the workshop. "My father built this before Briarwood Hollow existed," I said. "And your parents agreed to join the association," Vanessa replied. That was true. But Dad always said the workshop had been protected under their agreement. Mom just couldn't find the paperwork. I turned to the man in the reflective vest. "Are you with the county?" "No, sir. Contract field technician." "Did you determine the workshop violates an existing easement?" He hesitated. "I was asked to document a proposed alignment." Vanessa interrupted him and handed me a map. A thick blue line ran directly through Dad's workbench. "Sentiment does not override community compliance," she told Mom. "A hearing can be scheduled if you refuse to cooperate." As they left, the technician passed close enough to whisper, "I never said it was existing." Mom watched them disappear through the gate. Your father would have known what to do. I looked at the ruler in her hands. Dad always said rushing a measurement meant doing the job twice. Then I noticed 5 words printed in the corner of Vanessa's map. Phase 2, Preliminary Utility Alignment. We had 30 days. And before accusing anyone of lying, I was going to check every line they expected us not to question. By Friday morning, we had 29 days left. Before confronting Vanessa, I needed to understand exactly what my parents had agreed to, because she was right about one thing. They had joined the association. The question was what the association had agreed to in return. Dad built the workshop in 2006, when the land around my parents' house was mostly fields and pine trees. No neighborhood committees, no entrance signs. Just our house and the workshop he built over one long summer. He called it Mercer Woodworking. Dad made bookshelves, rocking chairs, and porch benches for people he knew. Once, he repaired a neighbor's dining table for free because it had belonged to her grandmother. He said some things were worth more after you understood their story, Mom told me. Inside the workshop, his tools still hung in careful rows. The drawers were labeled: wood screws, brass hinges, sandpaper, measuring tools. Near the window stood a small chair Dad had started making for my daughter. One armrest was smooth. The other remained unfinished. He thought he had more time, Mom said. Dad died 19 months ago. Mom kept the workshop exactly as he left it. In 2012, a developer bought most of the land surrounding my parents' house to build Briarwood Hollow. My parents kept the house, the yard, and the workshop. Their remaining parcel became part of the new community, and they joined the association. But Dad insisted on one condition: nobody touches my shop. Mom remembered him refusing to finish the sale until something protecting the workshop was added to the paperwork. She just could not remember where he kept it. We searched his office, property tax records, insurance statements, old receipts. No development agreement. No signed protection for the workshop. Mom found a photograph of Dad standing beside me outside the shop. Behind us was nothing but open land. Your father would never have agreed to let them tear it down, she said. I know. But knowing it and proving it are different things. She was right. Arguments depend on who speaks louder. Property disputes depend on what somebody can prove. I made a list: the deed, the recorded subdivision plat, any existing drainage easement, the association declaration, and whatever agreement Dad insisted on signing. Then I examined Vanessa's violation notice. It contained a deadline and several paragraphs calling the workshop an obstruction, but no recording number, no deed reference, no document identifying the supposed drainage corridor. That afternoon, I called the association's management office. I need the recorded easement supporting this violation. I can send you the engineering exhibit, the woman answered. I already have the drawing. I'm asking for the recorded easement, a deed reference, book and page number, or instrument number. She stopped typing. I'll have to check with Ms. Whitaker. I'd also like a copy of whatever my mother was asked to sign. That document was not submitted. That wasn't my question. She promised someone would call back. Nobody did. By Sunday, 27 days remained. I unfolded Vanessa's map again. The thick blue line crossed directly through Dad's workshop. But along the eastern boundary was a smaller dashed line. Its label read, "Existing Drainage Easement." The line through the workshop had a different label, "Proposed Alignment." 2 lines, 2 locations, only one described as existing. On Monday morning, with 26 days remaining, I drove to the Union County Register of Deeds in North Carolina. If an easement really crossed Mom's workshop, there would be a record. And if there was no record, somebody had a lot of explaining to do. The Register of Deeds office did not look like the kind of place where somebody's scheme came apart. Fluorescent lights, public computers, a printer that sounded one bad afternoon away from retirement. But if Vanessa was telling the truth, the proof would be there. We had 26 days left. I started with Mom's deed, then searched every recorded easement connected to the property. There was one, 15 feet wide, along the eastern boundary, exactly where the dashed line appeared on Vanessa's map. I compared the recorded subdivision plat with her colored printout. Same property, same workshop, but the thick blue line cutting through the building? Missing. A clerk noticed the documents spread across my desk. Have you checked the grantor index? I searched under Mercer. Try the association and the developer. Related documents are sometimes indexed differently. I searched every name and reference I could find. Nothing established another drainage corridor through the workshop. The clerk pointed to Vanessa's map. This says preliminary. I noticed. That would not be a recorded subdivision plat. One document had a recording reference and a surveyor's certification. The other had bright colors and the word proposed. I requested copies of the deed, the recorded plat, the existing easement, and the association declaration. Then I asked where unapproved development proposals were kept. The planning office, the clerk said. That was where I went next. A planning employee pulled up the application for Briarwood Hollow Phase 2. The first page showed the existing neighborhood. The second showed the proposed expansion, new homes, new streets, and 2 oversized lots bordering the eastern side of Mom's property. Lot 47, Lot 48. Both were larger and better positioned than the surrounding home sites. A note explained that using the existing eastern drainage corridor would require additional grading and changes to both lots. Then I found the alternative alignment. It crossed Mom's property, straight through the workshop. The engineering notes described that route as shorter and less disruptive to the Phase 2 layout. Less disruptive. Apparently, demolishing somebody else's building did not count. Does the developer already have permission to use this route? I asked. The employee pointed to a review comment. Any off-site drainage rights would need to be secured before the improvements could proceed. And this property is outside the project boundary? Yes. So the application doesn't give them the right to cross it. A development application is not an easement. That was when everything connected. They did not have an existing drainage problem under Dad's workshop. They had a future development problem beside it. Using the actual eastern route would force them to redesign 2 premium lots. Using Mom's land would protect those lots. I requested copies of the plans and noticed the applicant's name, Holloway Residential Development. It sounded familiar. I just could not place it. Then Mom called. They came back. Who? Vanessa, and 2 men carrying measuring equipment. Did you let them in? No. Good. Keep the gate closed. She said they needed to mark the area before the hearing. What hearing? The one scheduled for Tuesday next week. 8 days. Vanessa had already moved the process forward. Did she leave anything? An envelope. Don't sign anything. Don't let anyone onto the property. I'm coming home. Mom lowered her voice. She said the association could make things much worse. I looked at the recorded plat in one hand and the Phase 2 proposal in the other. One showed the easement that existed. The other showed the route somebody wanted. She can try, I said. But this time, we're checking the measurements. By the time I got home, Vanessa and the men with measuring equipment were gone. The gate was closed. Mom was waiting at the kitchen table with an unopened envelope. Inside was a hearing notice. Tuesday of the following week, 6:30 in the evening. The alleged violation was obstruction of a community drainage and maintenance corridor. Mom could present evidence, but the board could impose a fine if it decided she was responsible. Vanessa was building an official process around a line that did not exist. I placed the recorded plat beside her proposed map. Mom studied both. They're not even close. No. Then why would she say the workshop is blocking it? Because she needs us to believe the route she wants already exists. Mom's expression changed. She thought I wouldn't check. She thought nobody would. The county records were strong evidence. But if we entered the hearing with nothing but my interpretation of 2 maps, Vanessa could call it confusion. We needed a professional. I found a licensed surveyor named Malcolm Reed. He asked whether Mom authorized him to inspect the property. She did. He arrived Tuesday morning. 25 days remained before the deadline. 7 days remained before the hearing. Malcolm reviewed the deed, the recorded plat, and the existing easement instrument. Then he located the boundary markers and measured the distance between the workshop and the actual drainage corridor. The recorded easement is 15 feet wide, he said. And the workshop? Approximately 38 feet from its nearest edge. 38 feet? I'll document the exact measurements in my report. I handed him Vanessa's map. He pointed to the eastern boundary. This alignment is existing. Then he indicated the blue line through the workshop. This one is proposed. A proposed line does not change a recorded easement. A silver SUV stopped near the curb. Vanessa stepped out and remained outside the gate. Who authorized this survey? She asked. My mother. This concerns association property management. Malcolm removed his sunglasses. I was retained by the property owner to evaluate her property. Vanessa folded her arms. The association has access rights when maintenance is necessary. Malcolm nodded. Access for maintenance and a new drainage alignment are not the same thing. Vanessa looked past him toward Mom. Ruth, your son is making this unnecessarily complicated. Mom stepped down from the porch. Then answer one question. Vanessa waited. Where is the easement you say runs through my husband's workshop? Vanessa adjusted the papers on her clipboard. The hearing will address the association's position. Then she returned to her SUV. Malcolm watched her leave. She didn't dispute the recorded easement location. No. But be careful. Property boundaries are one issue. Association restrictions are another. She called it a drainage violation. Today, if somebody wants the building removed badly enough, they might try a different argument tomorrow. He was right. We had proved the workshop was outside the existing easement. We had not yet proved it was protected from later architectural restrictions. That afternoon, the association manager finally emailed the hearing materials. One attachment was an engineering document labeled Phase 2 Drainage Feasibility Review. A sentence halfway down the page read, "Preferred drainage connection cannot proceed without removal of existing accessory structure." Another note explained, "Alternative eastern alignment requires reconfiguration of lots 47 and 48. Not maintenance, not an emergency, a developer's preferred route." I showed Mom. "They knew," she said. "It certainly looks that way." She stood in the workshop doorway. Inside, sunlight fell across Dad's workbench and the drawers beneath it. Wood screws, sandpaper, measuring tools. "Your father told me they promised this place was protected," she said. "I remember. He made them put it in writing. Then we need to find it." We had 7 days until the hearing. And somewhere among the things Dad left behind, there had to be a reason he never worried about losing his shop. By Wednesday morning, we had 24 days before the deadline, 6 days before the hearing, and one question we still could not answer. What had my father made them sign? Malcolm's survey proved the workshop stood outside the recorded easement, but Vanessa could still claim it violated the association's architectural rules. We needed someone who understood the difference. Her name was Priya Shah, a real estate attorney who specialized in property disputes. After reviewing our documents, she pointed to Malcolm's survey. "This answers the easement question." Then she tapped the association declaration. "This determines what restrictions apply to the workshop." "Dad built it before the neighborhood existed," I said. "That matters. But your parents voluntarily joined the association. The workshop's age alone does not automatically protect it." Mom leaned forward. "Thomas made them promise it could stay." "Was that promise in writing?" "He insisted." Priya turned to a section near the back of the declaration. Reserved rights and existing conditions. One sentence referenced something I had overlooked. "The Mercer retained parcel remains, subject to the rights, conditions, and protections established in the Mercer retained parcel agreement." I stared at the page. "So there is an agreement?" "It is referenced," Priya said. "We need the actual document and its recording information." Why didn't I find it at the county? It may have been indexed under the developer or included in another recorded instrument. She looked at Mom. "Where did your husband keep important things?" Mom pulled Dad's wooden ruler from her handbag. Then her expression changed. "He always said important things should stay where he could keep an eye on them." "The workshop," she nodded. "He built that workbench himself." 20 minutes later, we were standing beneath the workshop window. The unfinished chair waited beside the bench. Mom opened the drawer labeled measuring tools, carpenter's squares, marking gauges, a tape measure, calipers wrapped in cloth. We removed everything. Nothing. Then Mom used Dad's ruler to measure the outside of the drawer, then the inside. "This drawer is deeper than this," she said. She was right. The outer frame was almost 2 inches taller than the interior. I ran my fingers along the wooden bottom and found a small notch near the back. When I pressed it, the base lifted. A narrow compartment appeared underneath. Inside was a sealed document sleeve. Across the front, in Dad's handwriting, were 4 words: house, land, workshop, keep. Mom covered her mouth. Inside were the original building permit, an older survey, and a signed document. Mercer retained parcel agreement. The recording reference was printed on the first page, and under existing improvements, the language was unmistakable. The detached woodworking structure existing on the Mercer retained parcel shall be recognized as an approved existing improvement. Another provision stated the workshop could not be removed solely because of later architectural standards, and no additional drainage rights could be created without a separate written agreement from the property owner. He covered everything, I said. Mom rested her hand on the workbench. He knew what he was signing. I called Priya and read her the recording reference. Now verify it, she said. At the Register of Deeds, we searched by the book and page number. The agreement appeared immediately. Same property. Same workshop protection. Same restriction against additional drainage rights. Recorded 14 years earlier. We requested a certified copy. Priya compared it with the declaration and the subdivision plat. Your husband made sure this promise became part of the property's documented history, she told Mom. So Vanessa can't call the workshop unapproved. Not based on later architectural rules that contradict this agreement. And the proposed drainage line? They cannot create additional rights without the separate written agreement this document requires. Then Priya turned to the signatures. Thomas Mercer, Ruth Mercer, and the representative for the original developer, Grant Holloway. I pulled out the Phase 2 application, Holloway Residential Development. Mom looked from one document to the other. You think it's the same man? We need to verify his connection to the current company, Priya said. But the name finally made sense. Grant Holloway was the man who promised Dad the workshop would stay. Now a company carrying his name wanted a drainage line straight through it. Mom stared at Dad's signature. He trusted that man to keep his word. No, I said. Dad trusted him to sign it. Priya closed the folder. Now, we need to know whether Vanessa understood this agreement existed. I thought about the clipboard, the hidden language we never got to read, and the 2 premium lots her preferred route would protect. Dad had safeguarded the workshop. Someone was counting on us never finding out. By Thursday, we had 23 days before Vanessa's deadline, 5 days before the hearing. We knew the workshop was protected. Now, we needed to know who was pretending otherwise. Priya started with public business records. Grant Holloway was listed as a manager of Holloway Residential Development. The same man who signed Dad's agreement in 2012 was connected to the company behind Phase 2. Then, Priya requested the association's records concerning Mom's violation. Board minutes, engineering invoices, hearing materials, and the form Vanessa asked Mom to sign. The management office provided the documents we already had. But the authorization form, they claimed they could not locate it. They're avoiding the important questions, Priya said. That evening, I reviewed the Phase 2 marketing materials. Lots. 47 and 48 were advertised as premium wooded home sites. At the bottom of the brochure was the exclusive sales representative, Whitaker Property Group. Public licensing information confirmed Vanessa was connected to the brokerage. If the developer used the eastern drainage route, both lots would need to be redesigned. There was no evidence of a secret payment, no proof of a specific commission, but there was an obvious professional interest Vanessa had never disclosed. The next morning, my phone rang. My name is Denise Carter, the caller said. I'm the association treasurer. I waited. I need to speak with you and your attorney about an engineering payment. We met at Priya's office. Denise brought a folder of association records. The board was told there was an existing community drainage problem, she explained. Vanessa asked us to approve an engineering review. The payment was described as a community drainage assessment, but the actual invoice identified something else. Briarwood Hollow. Phase 2. Preferred outfall alignment. Lots 47 and 48. The association paid for this? Priya asked. Denise nodded. I thought it concerned existing neighborhood infrastructure. Did Vanessa disclose her connection to the brokerage marketing those lots? Denise examined the brochure. No, she did not. Then she removed another document, an unsigned form included in the board's enforcement materials. Drainage inspection acknowledgement and site access authorization. That's what Vanessa wanted Mom to sign, I said. The first page sounded harmless. An acknowledgement of drainage discussions. Permission for inspection. But the second page changed everything. The owner acknowledges the proposed drainage alignment and authorizes access and removal of conflicting improvements. The workshop, Priya said. Then Denise pointed to another sentence. Activities may include improvements addressed under the Mercer retained parcel agreement. Priya looked up. They knew. Vanessa knew the workshop was protected. Her own document identified the agreement by name. Yet she told Mom the building was unauthorized, and she called the form a simple acknowledgement. Denise produced an internal enforcement note dated before Vanessa first visited the house. The president advised management that owner consent would be required to address existing structural protections and facilitate the preferred drainage corridor. Existing structural protections, written down before the violation notice. Before the clipboard, before Vanessa claimed the workshop blocked an existing easement. "Why are you helping us?" I asked Denise. "Because I approved that engineering payment thinking it benefited the neighborhood." She looked at Mom. And nobody should use association authority to pressure a homeowner for somebody else's development. By Monday, one day remained before the hearing. Priya submitted the evidence to the association manager and the executive board. The recorded plat, Malcolm's survey, the certified Mercer agreement, the engineering invoice, the Phase 2 plans, the brokerage brochure, the board minutes, and Vanessa's unsigned authorization. Denise confirmed she would attend as treasurer and executive board member. "Vanessa will try to control the room," she said. "Then we make sure the board knows what it's being asked to decide," Priya replied. Every document told part of the story. Together, they proved something more troubling. Vanessa had not overlooked the agreement protecting Dad's workshop. She had read it. And then she handed my mother a pen. By Tuesday evening, 18 days remained before Vanessa's deadline. But the only thing that mattered was what happened inside the Briarwood Hollow community room. 5 board members sat at the table. Vanessa occupied the center. Denise sat 2 chairs away. Mom carried Dad's wooden ruler in her handbag. Priya brought the evidence. Malcolm brought his survey. At Mom's request, the board agreed to hear the matter during the open portion of its regular meeting. A dozen neighbors filled the folding chairs behind us. Word about the workshop had traveled fast. Vanessa looked at us. "I wasn't aware Mrs. Mercer planned to bring an audience." "The association was informed that I would represent her," Priya replied. "Mr. Reed is here if the board wants to review his survey." The association manager confirmed that Priya's documents had been received. Vanessa opened the hearing. "This concerns an unauthorized structure obstructing a designated community drainage corridor." She lifted the map with the thick blue line. The owner was given an opportunity to cooperate, but refused. Priya placed the recorded plat on the table. "Which recorded instrument establishes a drainage easement through Mrs. Mercer's workshop?" Vanessa pointed to her map. "The corridor is clearly identified." "That is a proposed alignment. I asked for the recorded instrument." "The association has maintenance responsibilities." Malcolm stepped forward. "The recorded easement runs along the eastern boundary. The workshop is approximately 38 feet from its nearest edge." A board member studied his report. "So the workshop is not inside the easement?" "Not the recorded one." Vanessa crossed her arms. "The association still has maintenance access rights." "Access for maintaining existing infrastructure is not a right to create a new drainage corridor," Priya said. Vanessa changed direction. "Regardless, the structure does not meet current architectural standards." Priya opened another folder. "Then let's discuss the Mercer retained parcel agreement." She handed the certified document to the board. Recorded in 2012, referenced in the association declaration. One member read aloud. "The detached woodworking structure shall be recognized as an approved existing improvement." He looked up. "This says the workshop was approved." and protected against removal based solely on later architectural rules, Priya said. Another provision required a separate written agreement before creating additional drainage rights. Vanessa shook her head. An old document cannot prevent the association from addressing a legitimate community concern. Denise placed the engineering invoice on the table. Then we should establish whose concern this actually is. She read the description. Briarwood Hollow Phase 2. Preferred outfall alignment. Lots 47 and 48. Another board member frowned. I thought we paid for an assessment of existing drainage. So did I, Denise said. Priya presented the Phase 2 plans. The actual eastern route would require changes to these 2 premium lots. She indicated the alternative. This proposed route crosses Mrs. Mercer's workshop. Vanessa sat straighter. Future development benefits everyone. Then why did you fail to disclose your connection to the company marketing those lots? Denise asked. Priya placed the brochure beside the invoice. Whitaker Property Group. Exclusive sales representation. Lots 47 and 48. A board member looked at Vanessa. Is this your brokerage? Yes, but the board knows I work in real estate. Knowing your profession is not the same as knowing you have an interest in these specific lots, Denise said. Vanessa's expression hardened. I will not allow personal attacks. Then I request the board address the conflict before continuing. Another member seconded Denise's request. The board voted. 4 in favor. Vanessa opposed. The motion passed. The vice president took over the hearing. Vanessa remained at the table, but she was no longer controlling it. Somewhere behind us, a chair creaked. A neighbor muttered, "Unbelievable," just loud enough to carry. Another held up a phone after the board confirmed that recording the open session was permitted. Is there anything else? The vice president asked. Priya placed the unsigned authorization form before the board. This is what Vanessa asked Mrs. Mercer to sign. The first section mentioned inspection. The second authorized access and removal of conflicting improvements. The workshop, Denise said. Vanessa leaned forward. It was never signed. Fortunately, Priya replied. Would it have created an easement? The vice president asked. No, but it could have been used to argue that Mrs. Mercer consented to access and removal. Priya pointed to a sentence beneath that section. Activities may include improvements addressed under the Mercer retained parcel agreement. Then she looked directly at Vanessa. You claimed the workshop was unauthorized. Vanessa said nothing. You claimed it obstructed an existing easement. Still nothing. Then why does the document you asked Mrs. Mercer to sign identify the agreement protecting her workshop by name? Vanessa looked toward the manager, then toward Denise. The form was prepared by someone else. Denise produced the internal enforcement note. The president advised management that owner consent would be required to address existing structural protections and facilitate the preferred drainage corridor. The note was dated before Vanessa first visited Mom's house. The vice president lowered the document. You knew the workshop was protected. I understood there were historical complications, Vanessa said. Historical complications? Mom had not spoken until that moment. She placed Dad's wooden ruler on the table. My husband made an agreement with your developer. He signed it. The county recorded it. And you knew it existed before you came to my home. Vanessa looked away. You told me you were protecting the neighborhood, Mom said. Then she glanced at the brokerage brochure. You were protecting your own business. After a short recess, the vice president announced the decision. The drainage violation was unsupported. The workshop was an approved existing improvement. The notice would be withdrawn. No fine would be imposed. The proposed Phase 2 route would require the owner's permission, and the board would review the engineering payment and Vanessa's apparent conflict of interest. A murmur ran through the folding chairs behind us. Someone clapped once, then caught themselves. Vanessa's face stayed still. Her ears had gone red. Mom reached for my hand. Vanessa gathered her papers without looking at us. Nobody in the room said goodbye to her. A woman near the door stepped aside rather than let their shoulders brush. Outside, a gray-haired man waited beside a dark sedan. "Mrs. Mercer," he said. Mom stopped. Grant Holloway, the man who signed the promise, and the man whose company wanted a drainage line through the workshop. "There may still be a way to make this work," he said. "There was always a way," I replied. "You just hoped she wouldn't know she had a choice." Grant Holloway stood beside his sedan. "Ruth, I never wanted this to become personal." Mom looked at him. "You signed an agreement protecting my husband's workshop." The development team was reviewing several options. "That wasn't what I asked." Grant hesitated. "I remember the agreement." "Then you remember your promise." We left him standing there. The next morning, the association confirmed that the violation had been withdrawn. No fine, no removal deadline, and no access to Mom's property for the proposed route without her permission. 3 days later, Grant's attorney contacted Priya, not Vanessa, not the association. An attorney representing the company that wanted rights it did not have. He asked whether Mom would consider a revised drainage route. Priya explained the conditions. The workshop would remain untouched. There would be no misleading authorization. And there would be no access without a proper written agreement. Grant's first proposal came too close to the workshop. Mom rejected it. The next followed the eastern side of the property, near the existing corridor, with design changes to avoid the building. Malcolm checked the boundaries. Priya reviewed the documents. Mom asked who would restore the yard, when maintenance crews could enter, and whether the route could ever be expanded. Every answer went into the agreement. The developer would cover installation, engineering changes, and restoration. The easement would be limited to the surveyed area. Future access would require reasonable notice, except in a clearly defined emergency. And nothing would cancel the protections Dad secured in 2012. Grant offered $20,000. Mom declined. He offered $35,000. She declined again. "Are you trying to punish them?" I asked. "No," she said. "I'm making sure they understand they have to ask." Eventually, Grant agreed to $45,000 and every condition Priya demanded. It was not a fine. It was not a court award. It was compensation for a limited property, right the developer could not simply take. Mom signed after Malcolm verified the final survey, and Priya confirmed the agreement was ready for recording. She placed Dad's wooden ruler beside the document. "Measure twice," she said. Then she signed once. The developer adjusted the Phase 2 plans. The 2 premium lots changed slightly but remained buildable. The neighborhood received a workable drainage solution, and Dad's workshop stayed exactly where it belonged. Meanwhile, the executive board reviewed the engineering payment and Vanessa's undisclosed connection to the brokerage marketing those lots. Homeowners requested a special association meeting. Vanessa resigned before it happened. She said she wanted to focus on her professional responsibilities. Nobody seemed particularly surprised. By then, a recording from the open board session was already moving through the neighborhood group chat. A few dozen views turned into a few hundred by the weekend. People who had never spoken to Vanessa suddenly had opinions about her. 2 months later, a for sale sign appeared outside Vanessa's house. Denise remained treasurer. The association adopted stronger rules for reviewing conflicts of interest and expenses connected to outside developments. There was no dramatic arrest, no $1-million verdict. Just an HOA forced to withdraw a false accusation, a developer forced to negotiate honestly, and a woman who learned that being quiet did not mean being powerless. A week after the new agreement was recorded, I returned to the workshop. Morning sunlight came through the eastern window. Mom was already there. The unfinished chair stood beside Dad's workbench. One armrest smooth, the other still rough. I picked up a sheet of sandpaper. "You remember how he showed you?" Mom asked. "Slowly, with the grain. And don't press too hard." I worked until the rough wood felt smooth beneath my fingers. Not perfect, but close enough that Dad would have pretended to criticize it before admitting I had done all right. Mom smiled. "She's going to love that chair." "She should," I said. "Her grandfather started it. And her father finished it." I looked around the workshop, the tools, the shelves, the old wooden sign above the door. Everything still where it belonged. Vanessa thought the workshop was an inconvenience. Grant thought it was an obstacle. They measured the building in square feet. Dad measured it in promises. Mom measured it in memories. And I finally understood that some things are worth protecting, not because they are expensive, but because somebody you love built them carefully enough to last. Mom placed Dad's ruler on the workbench, exactly where it belonged. If you were in Ruth's position, would you have accepted the $45,000 easement agreement? Or would you have refused and forced the developer to redesign the entire project? And what do you think should have happened to Vanessa after everything she did? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, hit the like button and subscribe to HOA Next Door for more neighborhood conflicts, HOA drama, and the kind of justice that only shows up when somebody finally checks the paperwork. Thanks for watching, and remember, measure twice, sign once.